Hey there, and welcome to the Sunday New Year's Eve edition of Talking Horses. You're stuck with this duo one more day. I'm Maggie Wolfendale alongside Sarah El-Badwi. And yes, do you get the honors of getting Andy fresh off the layoff?
Of course I do. I have to be
Lucky
very prepared
you.
for tomorrow.
You do, yes. As we saw the Gravesend yesterday, bold journey in just exquisite form right now for Hall of Famer Bill Mott.
And the weights didn't even matter yesterday for him. Still able to get a nice setup and produce that closing kick, but he won by a pretty good margin in there as well. So certainly a very classy horse. Looking forward to seeing what he does next year.
And our feature today, the Queens County. We'll get to that a little bit later on in race number 8. Pick 6 was hit yesterday, so no carryover. But if you want to play along with us, as always, make sure you do so with your NYRA Bets account. And new members, as always, you can get using promo code MATCH200, get that $200 deposit match bonus when you sign up at nyrabets.com. Also, we have the middle pick 4, as we typically do, and then the special Sundays is the 0% takeout on Exactas here at Aqueduct. Make sure you opt in over at nyrabets.com. And then a really fun wager along with Oaklawn that we've introduced is the cross country pick 5. Today starts a little bit later as we kick things off with the Queens County at 3:40. It will include the late double here from the Big A and the last 3 from Oaklawn, including the year's end stakes. And you can catch all of the action for that cross country pick 5 plus a little bit more on America's Day at the Races. Coverage starts at 2:30 today on FS1. So looking forward to covering all of that. You'll have me, Sarah, Lafitte Pinkai, Paul, and Richie out at Oaklawn too.
Yeah, I think they're having a little too much fun over there. It seems like Richie's being treated like the local celebrity that he is. Everybody very excited that he's there. So definitely looking forward to catching up with them later on today.
As we'll jump into the action here with the maiden special weight for the New York bred fillies, 2-year-olds going the 6 furlongs. And we'll start by talking about Princess Vino in here, Sarah, who is a second-time starter for Todd Pletcher, bet down 3-5 on debut, was wired by a 36-1 shot. But we watched the head-on of her debut, and she just broke slowly and just seemed kind of clueless from the onslaught.
Yeah, she was certainly compromised at the beginning of this race, sporting the field a couple of lanes, and then was far back and started making this wide run. And you thought maybe she actually had a chance to win and get the job done in here behind that huge long shot that was able to succeed, but had every right to be a little bit tired, flatten out in the later stages of this race. And I remember when we were talking about 5-2 not that long ago, you asked me if it bothered me a little bit that the race was won by such a huge price and the favorite had kind of missed the break and was still able to catch her. She came back and ran kind of the same race to finish 3rd. So overall, I kind of wonder what the depth of that field was, but you can't ignore the trouble that she had as well as the way that she was bet.
I agree. But yes, the 5-2 coming back and actually regressing a little bit in her Beyer speed figure with that 3rd. So again, like you said, it just reiterates the fact of what did she face. She could jump up and win, but both of us going to a 3rd-time starter in number 6, Mel's Baby Sister, who I think was compromising against the track, exiting that P. Mutter Pickle race. She ran very well, I think, to be second.
She did.
Distant second, but
she showed a little bit more speed as well. I mean, I like that she was a little bit more forward in there. I like the improvement in terms of her Beyer speed figure as well from that debut to that 2nd start. And even though P. Mutter Pickle was certainly enhanced by the racetrack, she did come back and run a little bit of the same type of race against winners and ran very well, I thought, on a fairer surface. So I think that maybe you look at that performance and you kind of doubt whether or not she was going to be able to back it up. But she ran really well. So I think that that also bodes well for Mel's Baby Sister, and that she faced a horse that was actually decent and not only looking that way because of the inside speed bias.
We do have a 1st-time starter, and as it's very early in the wagering, at 4-1 right now is Sohana. She'll go out for trainer Brad Cox, daughter of Solomini, who with this freshman crop has been hitting with 10% with his 1st-time starters. Excuse me. She sold for $200,000 after working 10-1 at the OBS March sale. Now, she was asked a bit in that workout She did show a really nice extension to her stride, though.
She did, and I like that some of the recent workouts as well have been pretty quick, since certainly seems to be one that will likely show some speed if she gets out of the gate okay on debut. As far as the pedigree, there wasn't a ton going on.
Exactly.
So certainly somebody had to have liked the way that she worked as well as her physical impression to be paying that much because, of course, we had not seen at that time what the Salaminis were doing on the racetrack.
But they all seem to sell quite well at those OBS sales. I mean, they went for a lot more than you would anticipate for a sire that in his freshman crop and only stands for 6,500 here in New York. So, yeah, like you said, they must have liked what they saw. But furthermore, it's not like Brad Cox has these great numbers at NYRA with his debuters.
Well, actually, with his 2-year-old's dirt sprinting only at Aqueduct, there aren't a lot of them, but he does pretty well. He's 3 for 14, 9 of them have finished in the money, and the ROI is 199. So usually they get bet, but it's not to the point where they're completely unbettable. And I think in a race like this is a horse that might be a fair enough price if you like her to take a shot.
Yeah, I just plugged in NYRA anyway. Thanks, Sarah, for trying to show me up.
Sorry.
Anyway, moving on to race number 2. No,
I have to prepare for tomorrow.
Yeah, she's really chomping at the bit to get back with Andy. Race number 2, two life for 16, going the 6.5 furlongs here. I mean, this is a race that kind of just gives you headaches because who the heck are you going to trust in here?
Well, I wish that Katie Cakes was one that had some prior form to recommend other than that second place finish to Mally last time, because based on the way that Mally came back yesterday with that trouble, right, and was able to win or finish second yesterday against tougher company after she was kind of stuck along the inside and had to wait for some room at a huge price. I would almost want to put her on top, but she's not exactly a horse that seems to inspire a lot of confidence as far as her will to win.
No, I mean, in 10 career starts, she's finished second in 4 of them. So, yeah, she's not the winning type. A lot of times she compromises herself at the beginning, though it seems as though she's kind of gotten out of that habit as of late. She just is a bit slow into stride. So I went with her here because, yes, Linda can win with these types, but Active Lane, she was successful when she stretched out, and this is as short as she's ever going to go. She's going to have to come back off of the extended layoff in an effort which she was eased last time at Ellis Park in a much tougher field. I mean, we've all seen around here what Ain't Broke is capable of doing.
Absolutely. I think that just facing a world of better horses, and it's a bit of a question mark. I mean, she did no running, and she was wrapped up on in that start at Ellis, and prior to that, she was over at Horseshoe Indianapolis going longer when she was able to get the win. So you kind of have to wonder what the level of ability is, and this is a situation where it's not a first off the claim, it's actually a trainer switch. So the stats for that are very different than how she is when she's looking to claim horses and possibly move them up or down the claiming ranks. But I think that
Do you have a stat for that?
I do actually. First off the trainer switch, she's 16 for 96, so 17%, $1.48 ROI, which is not at all the same near the monster numbers that she has first off the claim. I just thought that she's trying to break a record. She's aggressively dropping certain horses. This might be one that could get the win facing horses that she's just never faced this level of competition before.
Do we have that replay, guys? Do we show it?
We have it.
I mean,
we should.
Okay, we've only talked about her for 2 minutes, but yeah, please show it.
There she is.
Yeah, there she is in those recognizable Robert S. Evans colors. And she's just going to destroy this field, breaking her maiden back in May of this past year.
Yeah, I mean, she ran fine. It remains to be seen how she's going to do with the cutback in distance, how she's going to do against this level of competition, and whether or not you think that something went awry last time out at Ellis. But for me, it was a chance I was willing to take just because I really didn't love a lot of the other horses in here as far as what we'd seen from them lately, or trust that they necessarily had the will to win with Katie Cakes.
I wonder how much speed they get from Active Lane today. A horse that has shown an ability to be forward going longer, I wonder if Linda thinks that she is quick enough to be competitive here going the 6.5 furlongs. She'll also send out the more speedier George's Vice, who I don't particularly like. You also have a horse like Lady Banker, again, one that I'm not too thrilled about, that also has a bit of speed.
She does. She's the one that's kind of taken a little bit longer to get the first win of her career, but hasn't had as many opportunities to disappoint as far as her dirt sprints overall, because this was a horse that they were really intent on being on the turf. And then once we get to winter around here, you have what you have, and you need to see if it works out on the dirt. So, I mean, I think that overall this is the type of situation where I just kind of wanted a new face other than horses that we'd seen a little bit of, but you could make a case for a couple in this spot.
Moving on to race number 3, it is a claiming 14 going the mile for the fillies and mares. And this is another one where it's a little bit, tough to trust some of the horses in here, but you have one at 5-2 on the morning line. Again, David Aragona on vacation. So Craig Milkowski filling in. But Maggie T, after a no-show performance going a mile and eighth, which I think is just much too far for her, she's going to come second off the layoff for Linda, dropping precipitously in class.
And this might be one of those aggressive drops that we were talking about, a horse that just has not been competitive as of late at higher levels. And this is a class drop that, based on the last performance, might be warranted. But at the same time, I mean, she has not faced competition like this in a long, long time. So you kind of have to wonder why. Although at the same time, again, like we talked about, Linda's trying to break a record here. She is second off the layoff, and maybe she's just not at the same level that she used to be.
Yeah, we had a replay for her of when she was in good form, when Linda ran her first off the bench, first off the claim, and stretched her out.
Defeated Amanda Foley in there.
Yeah. Are we? Okay.
We've got it. Do you think that she's going to be in front in here?
No. Yes, she could be if they want to be, aggressive with her, but you have a stretch out, like, boy, is she a lady, with the apprentice rider on, and obviously Vintage too, who has, some speed to boot. So we'll see, and both of them have apprentice riders on them, but as we've seen many times, Jose Lezcano can certainly seize the bull by the horns. I just don't know if she is actually the fastest naturally.
I agree.
She could be.
But
it's murky.
What about the newfound speed of Joey the Fish, who I have fourth and you don't have anywhere? But I think that we need to at least mention the fact
Rande Prasad barn.
The fact that this is a horse that was one of the dead left closers that we'd seen of all time, where she just gave herself so much work to do.
Distance at the first call.
So
a lot of
off
times.
the screen,
Yeah.
would be off the screen at the top of the stretch
Yep.
and still make up ground. And now, the last two starts, she's been forward, and she was able to win last time while being forwardly placed. And I know that she had a rider change, but you can't make things up that don't exist as far as her running style. So this is just a complete reversal of who she's been. She's been running faster races in general lately, and I kind of wonder what they do with her today with anticipated potential other speed in this race.
I agree with you, as she does step out of that non-2 condition and winning by 8 lengths last time. I went to a horse that will check out her last win, which was 2 back up at Finger Lakes, and shoot, there it is. In her last start, she was facing the boys in an allowance race, including a 1-9, in this race she was facing a 1-9 shot in Miss Slovig, who she was able to defeat, and I don't know how much chance she had in a tougher spot in the subsequent start, but I think she is an improving form for Jeremiah Engelhardt, and this is the right spot for her to be successful. With horses that have that speed, she looks like the proven one that wants to sit back and make that one run, but also not giving herself too much to do. I think she sits the right kind of trip with Dylan Davis today.
And she's at least shown that she can be competitive on this circuit, running third a couple
Exactly.
starts ago behind Chasing Daylight, who we earlier mentioned, just came back to win yesterday and is in really good form right now. So certainly able to kind of hold her own on this circuit, whereas sometimes you wonder where they do fit. I do think she is one of those Finger Lakes horses that does fit in this spot.
Moving on to race number 4, we'll kick off the mandatory payout of the Pick 6. It's an optional allowance for the New York bred fillies and mares going a mile. And Sarah, we'll start by talking about 3 horses that exit the December 7th race, which was won by Golden Rocket, who we'll see later on in the card in an open allowance race. For me, I thought that number 3 in this affair, who's number 8 today, April Antics, had the tougher trip. She she didn't look as though she was handling the turn well. She's actually on her wrong lead. She was on her outside lead for most of the running around that turn. She kind of dropped back. And whether it was because she was uncomfortable being inside and trying to go on the inside of other horses, I don't know. And she's actually going to get hemmed in here and pushed down late by fellow foe in this one, Amity Island. I thought she ran well in defeat, no doubt about it, winner. Again, I just don't know how good she is, but at the end of the day, I don't know how good this field is either, because the class of the field in here, Stone Creator, she's coming back off that long layoff.
And she was entered and she ended up scratching.
In a 6 furlong race, which Linda cited as being probably too short.
So they've had some intention to get her back to the racetrack, at least recently, so I do like that. However, isn't this a spot where she's going to have to deal with other speed towards the inside with Sue Ellen Michigan as well? And you kind of always have to wonder a little bit how these horses are going to come back and if she's going to be the same type of horse that we saw earlier this year. So I think that maybe if you have those questions, then April Antic seems like your consistent now horse, but she's just not necessarily a winning type.
Now, I thought that Linda just put Sue Ellen Michigan in this race to make the race go, because she's faster than Stone Creator. I mean, she's the one stretching out as she comes in off the back of her second consecutive win and into another new barn for Linda. She's in great form right now, and she's one that I've always kind of liked, I think, firstly because of the name.
The name is
for
fun.
all those Seinfeld fans out there. They're spectacular. And she has been spectacular as of now. We both picked Stone Creator knowing that she's going to have to overcome many things today. I think you and I just banking on the class. Is that how you saw it as well?
I think she's just the best horse in the race if she
Exactly.
shows up. And it's a big if, and if you don't want to take 4-1 or possibly less than that, depending on how things ultimately play out in the wagering, I get it, because she does have those questions, but I think you're looking at a horse that is the best horse in this race if she runs her race.
Yeah, there's a horse like Gone and Forgotten who I put third, but you don't particularly like. I don't know. I mean, True Empress is in great form up at Finger Lakes, but
she didn't run great here the other day.
No, but on the flip side of that, Horacio De Paz won with a similar horse yesterday with the Institute.
And Trelade had beat him and then didn't run that well yesterday either. So it depends. I mean, I think that you have to look at the success that he had yesterday with a horse coming in from Finger Lakes.
Same owner breeder and Barry Schwartz. I know. This horse scares me.
Okay.
I don't really like her, but I put her in there just because of the connections and what we've seen with the Finger Lakes Invaders.
Yeah, that's completely fair. I wish Kali Magic could run a little bit at all anymore, but it seems like that's not the case.
And does she really want to go a mile?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I know. It feels like her best races are behind her, and she's not the winningest type either.
Right.
Race number 5, maiden special weight. Sarah, I threw up my hands on this one because I was looking forward to Ignite the Light. He won't play today because we've seen one horse come back of that insanely fast maiden special weight on Cigar Mile Day that we historically have seen produce stakes winner after stakes winner in El Capi wiring the field, which it was a racetrack tilted towards those front runners on that sloppy surface, muddy surface. We saw the last place finisher, Vino Barbarino, drop in class and win.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how horses are coming out of that race. I know that he took a slight drop in class, but at the same time, he was the only one so far to run back. So certainly something worth monitoring going forwards. And Ignite the Light was going to be one of those horses that came out of that race worth taking a look at, that had some experience prior to that, which kind of ultimately led me to the other horse that's coming out of that race, and King Mendelssohn, who was a little bit further back. He was towards the inside before tipping out. And while he didn't do a ton of running that day, as you mentioned, that was a day where you needed to be forward to have your best chance to win. And we saw most winners be the inside speed.
Yeah.
We saw some horses make up ground with sort of Herculean efforts like Sierra Leone, Senor Buscador, but we didn't see a lot of horses closing ground for the most part. So I think that you can forgive him a little bit, as he did take some kickback in there, pass a couple of tired horses, and hopefully get enough of a foundation and education out of this race coming forwards, because it's possible that he ran into a complete monster first time out, and this field might not be of the same caliber.
He just probably needed it too. I think just from an experience standpoint, from a fitness standpoint, he could certainly jump up and win here. I went to one of the 2 Chad Brown horses. I don't know if I just liked what I saw from this horse. I know it sounds weird saying I like what I saw from a horse that finished 6th, beaten 7 1/4 lengths with timing difference. It was a maiden 100,000 claimer. So he's theoretically stepping up in class, and that race won by a 19-1 shot. I just like the looks of this horse individually. I could be completely off base here, and I totally get it, but he looked like a horse that was a big galloping type that's going to appreciate getting to a mile.
I kind of had some interest in the other part of the entry, Unique Insight, who gets back to this surface and debuted in a race where we've seen plenty of horses come out of there and do well. Drum roll, please, ran well in the Remsen. Huntball's been a little bit disappointing, I guess, but we've seen a couple of others exit that race and do well for themselves. So maybe this is a situation where they tried the turf. He didn't really appreciate it.
And
although
to be fair, Raucous, the dam, was a turf horse. So, of course, this horse, a half to Drake's Passage, the talented New York bred. So, yeah, I agree with you. I was 1-1A, whatever kind of thing. Let's talk a little bit about the former Chad Brown horse and Union Bulldog, who dropped down to the maiden 75, was 1-2 that day. And he just was never clear until the race was virtually over.
No, he had some trouble for sure in this race, and he seems like, maybe you've seen him, he seems like a big guy that getting inside of these types of horses and having all this sort of traffic trouble, much more so inconvenient for those bigger horses. And while we did see a first-time starter upset this field, it just seems like he was really uncomfy throughout most of the running of this race. However, at the same time, when you're dropping in class and you're 1-2, you're supposed to win.
Yeah, and this race wired by Dune Road that day. I think the blinkers on, fresh off the claim for Horacio de Paz, will help this guy out because, with Ignite the Light in here, without him in here, he has the best figures.
He does, absolutely. And I will say that that's quite a bit to dip in to take a horse for as a 2-year-old. I know that he originally cost $65,000, so they must have seen something that they liked with him to go after him in this spot, because you really never know where you're going to get going forwards when they do drop in for a tag like that.
And furthermore, you could also interpret it as not that negative of a drop down for the Chad Brown barn because they didn't pay that much for him at the end of the day. So let's talk about the 2 first-time starters quickly. Capital Idea, son of Classic Empire. There isn't much pedigree to report home on the bottom side, but there's some precocity with it.
There is. I mean, the dam was all synthetic and turf for the most part, but I agree. I think that this is the type that I like the workouts a little bit for this horse, and it's possible that you could be looking at a situation where Union Bulldog doesn't quite fit at this group. The Chad Brown entry, they just don't show up. It seems like the first-time starter for Todd Pletcher could kind of go either way, so then you're left with new faces and horses that didn't really run that well first time out. So certainly this could be one that steps up in here, and of course Christophe Lamont does very well in these types of situations.
Well, so does Todd Pletcher. Carolo Rapido, a son of Curlin, out of the multiple graded stakes winning dam. Also Kentucky Oaks winner Catherine Sophia. She's only had 2 foals, only one of which have won. That one was Mescal and has only won on the turf. So that will do it for the first race of the mandatory late pick 5 sequence. We're going to take a quick break here on Talking Horses and hear from our sponsors.
For almost 150 years, the Saratoga name has been synonymous with the finest quality, sustainably sourced spring water available anywhere. Saratoga carries on the rich tradition of its forefathers by crafting each stunning blue glass bottle with the same attention to detail and care that has been its hallmark for generations. Visit SaratogaSpringwater.com today or ask for us by name at your local market or restaurant. Saratoga Spring Water. Make every day exquisite.
Thanks to our sponsors over at Saratoga Spring Water for bringing you Talking Horses every day. Maggie and Sarah to take you through the late pick 4. And we have a nice allowance, higher level allowance race to kick that off, going the 6 furlongs. And we'll start by talking about, I think, the two-headed monster from the Rick Dutrow barn, in which we'll see 2 new acquisitions, one via the claim box, one via trainer change, beginning with Emerald Forest, who really ran well for previous connections in his last start here, Sarah, as we'll check out that replay.
He was kind of the less fancied part of the entry, as I felt they were more betting Amundsen in this spot, but he was able to sit a nice trip in here while Amundsen had to try to rally up the rail, which didn't work out for him. But he's a horse that's been in some decent form lately and really stepped it up here. He earned a 92 Beyer speed figure for this effort, and we saw Life Changer closing to finish second in here. A horse who didn't really run that well in his next start, but he was also stretching out in distance. It was a muddy sealed surface, and he was facing arguably tougher company, so maybe you forgive that from him. And of course, now off the trainer switch, of course, the Cantor Massies do a great job as well. But first off the claim for Rick Dutrow, he's had a lot of success since he's returned.
Yeah, exactly. I respect this horse. I'm not going to be surprised when he wins. You used Wake Surf, which I get. It could just be a better horse with the trainer change to Rick Dutrow, but I don't trust that 98 that he ran in a 3-horse field last time. I think it's totally inflated given the numbers of the 2 other foes in there that had previous run and then ran since. Ruggs did return to win, but with an 84, so he regressed 10 points.
I don't trust it either, I will say. I don't think that that's something that we're necessarily going to see again from him in this spot, but that was his only opportunity to sprint on the dirt.
Sure.
So I will say that, okay, now maybe they figured out that that might be a spot where he can be more successful, and give him another shot doing that as he makes the barn switch, because he's only really been on the turf throughout the majority of his career. While he has tried all 3 surfaces, that might be the thing that he ultimately ends up wanting to do. So I was willing to sort of look at that and think, okay, let's maybe pretend it's a 90 or even in the high 80s. I thought that maybe
I wrote down 86.
Yeah.
If that was worth anything.
just guessing.
Yeah, it did. That just seemed like what it should be, which arguably is his best effort by a mile. So yeah, I get it. But I just felt like there were too many other horses that were intriguing in here with Wake Surf. So let's jump towards the outside and check in with the returning Listen to Your Heart, who his last race, disappointment, but you would have to think that something happened. He was facing a decent field that day. And we'll go back to his start here in May when he was able to run down Harrodsburg in a very game fashion.
He was. He got the job done in here. He earned a 100 Beyer speed figure doing so. He had earned a 100 prior to that when beating Awesome Native, who is a very talented sprinter himself. But I kind of wonder overall, this was a small field. I know that he was able to run down a horse that was pretty comfortable on the front end in the very late stages. But then further back, you have American Law, who is, you know, who he is. He's a consistent type, but he's not at this level. He would be a big price in this spot. He's not a winning type either. And then Harrodsburg, we haven't seen him since he finished 3rd in the Dwyer, so who knows what he's up to, and that was a smaller field as well. So I kind of question, I know the race earned a high number, but what did he really have to do to get that done in there?
I went to a horse that you don't like at all in number 7, American Monarch, who yet again has to overcome a layoff. And last time out, I actually thought it was a better effort than what it may appear on paper, because we saw the winner, Divine Armor, that day come from well off the pace, and he was mixing it up early on the front end. And for me, given the layoff, I think he ran really, really well. 24 Mamba, who was actually in the second flight behind him, who ran second, would come back and win with a 91. So I'm just going to give American Monarch a chance here. I feel like he's one that might get a little bit lost. You might find a decent price on him. So, and plus now he's on the outside and drawn on the outside of the other speed in Andiamo Afrense,
which is who I kind of took a flyer with, a horse that needs to run much faster than he has in quite some time to be able to best this group. But if American Monarch doesn't try to go with him early, isn't he going to be alone?
Yeah.
So I kind of worry with him. We have a lot of horses that I think are better than him, but that will have to come catch him. And while his form might not have gone on enough from his 2-year-old year, he should get the setup he wants today, which is to be alone on the front end, which I think he needs in order to do his best running. And if he doesn't get that, he doesn't really run well. So I think that today, with the kind of setup that he's going to get and the price I think he'll be, I thought he was worth taking enough of a shot in here, but if he's not alone on the front end, he's not going to win.
Look, he's helped out a bit, but with a scratch as staff as day. And so American Monarch's the only one that can apply at least mild pressure. So I hear you.
Trafalgar for you? Oh, you have him 3rd.
I have him 3rd.
Deep closer.
Yeah, and I just don't know how much pace, like we just discussed, he's actually going to get.
that's why I kind of ended up going in a different direction from him. But again, he's very talented and capable. I just don't think it sets up for him.
Exactly. I like him as a horse. That's why I used him, but not in love with his chances today. As race number 7, claiming 14, going the mile in here. And we'll take a look at a race in which 2 of the lower price or projected lower price horses come out of. This is a start 2 back for both Ski Patrol and Amani's Eagle. Amani's Eagle, though, is exiting a race in which it feels like it's very live for the level.
It is. We've seen several horses exit that Blue Grotto race where he was bet down considerably in one of the more puzzling they knew types of situations that we've had as of late. And Amani's Eagle was finishing second to him. Grandpa's Kid, who finished third, has run back twice since then, running very respectably in both races to hit the board against Starter Allowance Company and earning an 80 and then an 82 Buyers. So it's not as though that one number came out of nowhere. He was able to back it up. We saw Prince of Joy win at a huge price coming out of that race, 63-1, and improved against 12,500 level claimers. So a couple of horses have been able to exit that race. Even MB's Money, who finished very far back, came back, finished second against Tougher, and improved. So that's a very live race going forwards. And Amani's Eagle finished second best out of those horses that have returned to come back and improve. So I wanted him towards the outside.
I don't trust him. I don't like the post position.
I know you're very familiar with him.
Yeah. He should run well, but I just can't necessarily trust him in here. So I went with a little bit of a new face, if you will. Again, this is claiming 14. None of them are really that easy to trust. But a horse that comes out of that race that we just watched in Coffray, who Ray Handel picks up. And before his last race, in which he was coming off a little bit of a freshening, he kind of ranged up wide, turning for home, and then he flattened out, swapping leads. It just felt like a horse that wasn't completely fit. And despite Ray's record for this meet here, he's typically a high percentage trainer. And I felt as though Ray, of anybody, could possibly get this horse back to some of his better efforts. And yeah, the argument could be made that he is a better turf horse overall, but some of his races going back to, the winter of last year make him a player here.
They do. If he can run back to many of his prior races, he'd be a major contender in this spot on really any of the surfaces. I thought he was a little bit interesting when he came back as well, but we saw Tommy Gunn run a race that we kind of hadn't seen before from him that day. So I agree. If you want to take another shot with him and give him another opportunity, I don't blame you.
But Tommy Gunn came back and backed it up.
He did. Yeah.
So
I'm not saying it came out of nowhere. I'm just saying
Yeah.
that was a really big performance to try to compete against.
Yeah,
for sure.
well, exactly. And I don't mind him going a little bit further. We both want to use number 9 in here, Strong Light, who was against the track going 1 1/8 miles last time, kind of got a ridiculous trip. I know early on it was a slow pace, so of course you want to kind of move into it, but I mean, you have to be like Secretariat to win that kind of trip.
You do, and this is a horse that generally wants to lay pretty far off of the pace and able to close up some ground, which is why you see a lot of those third place finishes for him, because he's showing up as the race is coming to an end. But that's kind of just who he is. He is getting a little class relief, though, which I like, and I think that he's a horse that consistently kind of just shows up and outruns his odds. So,
and let's face it, you have a Trevor McCarthy fan club.
Oh, I started the whole momentum.
Well, that's what I mean, exactly. So he does pick up Trevor today, which I think is an interesting pickup. Nothing against Romero, but I like the way that Trevor's been riding.
Yeah,
as of late.
He won another one at a price yesterday with the Institute. Well-timed ride in there, so certainly seeing the ball well.
Race number 8, it's our featured. It is the 118th running of the Queens County for 3-year-olds and up, traveling the 1 1/8 distance. And yes, we will see Signator participate here. Sean McGahee saying, wasn't sure if the race was going to fill, but once it did, he said, I'm not going to the race at Harlan's Holiday, I believe, at Gulfstream,
Yep.
and is gonna stay here. This is the home of his 3 wins to date in the 5 starts. He's shipping up from Payson Park. This was his best effort. Visually, Sarah, really like what I saw here.
He's just getting good. I mean,
Yeah.
he's a horse that kind of always showed that he was going to have some sort of ability.
You would hope for 1.7 million.
You would want to imagine. But he's kind of, taken the slower, more patient approach, which we see from this barn very frequently. And over his last 3 races, he's improved quite a bit, running a 94 Beyer speed figure last time, prior to that a 90 when getting the win. I think that he's just sort of really finding himself now. And if there's another step forward or even a repeat of his last performance, he's going to be pretty tough in here, though this is a very interesting and competitive field.
Does it concern you at all that he's having to ship, whereas all these other ones are well, I mean, they're coming from parks, some of them, but he's having to ship all the way from Florida, which he hasn't necessarily done before?
I guess it might if he had never run here before and we hadn't
Sure.
seen the same
Okay.
kind of success that he's already had during this season on this circuit. Of course, travel in general is a question, whether you've been there before or not, but that would bother me a little bit more if we've never seen him over this racetrack.
I went with Constitution Lawyer in here. He is a horse that just in raging form. And to think that he was able to get the win going the mile, I think speaks of how good he's doing right now. As Ray Handel has said that he's had to overcome several foot issues, but that gelding has really, made this horse focus and really put his best foot forward. Now he's going to wear down a stubborn foe in Daydreaming Boy here, but I feel as though Connections also think that possibly the 2-turn configuration is better for him overall. We'll see, though. I mean, he's won before going a 1-turn. I just like the 2 efforts he comes in here, and they have been targeting this race from the onslaught.
And in terms of numbers, he fits right there with
Yeah.
Signature, and you might get a little bit of a better price as well. And it's nice to know that he has done this distance before and maybe even prefers it. I mean, he was able to win 2 back over Good Skate at the Smile and Nathan. Prior to that, he was facing the more informed film star, so certainly has been keeping good form himself and slowly moving up a little bit too. So I think he makes a ton of sense in here, and he doesn't need to be anywhere near a part of the pace, but I don't see him sitting too far back and giving himself too much to do.
Speaking of the pace, Kinetic Sky, I thought, could inherit that more front-running position in here as he comes in off the 3-day rest, which, historically speaking, we've seen trainer Rick Dutrow have success with. But when he tried to do it with this horse back in September, that was off 6 days, it didn't go necessarily well.
And I was looking at Willie Beeman, who is the horse that he did this with to win the King's Bishop, then now the Alan Jerkins. And he ran well after that, but he never won again. And I was like, maybe a little bit interesting. But hey, Kinetic Sky is in great form right now. His last 2 races have been wins. He's running extremely well at the moment and running competitive numbers that I get wanting to strike while the iron is hot. Does he really want to go 1 1/8 miles, though?
Yeah, that's my thing with him.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if this ultimately is the distance that he
I
prefers.
didn't like the 9 furlongs. I didn't like the fact that he didn't run well off a quick turnaround before. I respect him, and I think his early possible pace presence makes him dangerous, but there were too many negatives that outweighed the positives. As number 7, King Kumbale, he comes in here off of a win, like several of these in here, though down at Laurel for the Dickie Small Stakes, and look at him here. He's going to be Whitecap and Abner Adorno just sitting on a ton of horse. He's going to have to bull his way through in between horses, those light blue silts, white bridle, and black blinkers. And he's going to eventually kind of put some separation between him and his field. Good old Forewarned, though, rallying into second. Forewarned won this race 2 years ago. He's going to be back to play yet again. I was really blown away with how well King Kumbale looked when I saw him on Pennsylvania Derby Day for the Alphabet Soup. He looks like a completely different horse, just really kind of reaching that full physical potential. And I think Butch Reed, who always brings live horses here, could have this guy heading in the right direction yet again.
And bringing horses recently as well to have some success with. So certainly bringing the right types as of late, including overall in general. He makes a lot of sense in here. I kind of wondered if he was going to get enough pace going this distance. I feel like he got a little bit more last time.
Well, that's the thing, too, is that I feel like, you go 2 back when he was defeated by Awfully Cool. He was forward, and he was. Harnessed down by Abner Adorno. I think you're right in that he wants something to run at.
But he can sit closer if he needs to.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think he's a deep closer because that was a pretty hot pace at Laurel last time. All right, an interesting edition of the Queens County. Really looking forward to it later on. It is our feature. It also kicks off that cross-country pick 5, which does include race number 9, an allowance race for the fillies and mares going the 7 furlongs. And Rick Dutrow, I like his horse in here. I don't know about you, Sarah. Where did you go? You have okay. We just have flip-flop picks. Proudfoot.
Who did you pick? It says the 3.
Oh, I did.
Maybe.
I did.
Well, you
I
can
did.
change. You can change
you know
if you
what?
want to.
I did last minute. I said, you know what? Going the 7/8, I'd prefer a horse turning back a bit than a horse trying to stretch it out.
Oh, okay.
But I like both
But you
of these
thought
horses
about
a
her.
lot.
Well, I do too.
Yeah.
So there we
when
go.
I first, this is probably a mistake. I should have
Go
probably
with your
stuck with my
gut.
gut instinct. Exactly. But let's talk about Proudfoot because her first race off the claim for this barn was really good, and Icy Reply came back to kind of solidify this effort.
Absolutely, and this was a situation where I know there was a little bit of buzz on Twitter about where did this performance come from, and then first off the claim to improve this much, and this was a horse that had always shown a little bit of ability and had run competitively at this level before, but had a lot of gait issues and was not giving herself any favors at the start of the race by breaking slowly. Well, she got out of the gate quickly this day, was more forwardly placed, and good things happened.
Yeah.
And she also got that nice outside post position, which she's going to get again in here. So I think it was more a function of her having a better race for herself, more so than that race just appearing out of thin air.
Okay, now let's talk about Sweet Mystery here, who has just been so consistent with the races that she's run. She finished 3rd behind Ain't Broke last time, who, like we said earlier, is in raging form, regressed a little bit off that figure from the November 26th race. But I kind of thought, and I get what Trevor was thinking, maybe just taken out of her comfort zone a little bit last time out, kind of really hustled, and she just got a bit tired in the end.
And hasn't she just been facing better horses overall?
Exactly.
I think that overall, the company that she has kept over her past few starts has just been superior to what she's going to run into today. And there might be some horses that might be taking another step forward. But as far as been there, done that, I think that she's the one that you want overall and just has had the most consistent form against the toughest company.
Yeah, that's exactly how I saw it. Whereas, you know, you have horses like Sweetest Princess, who was 3rd behind White Chocolate, who was 1-2, who wired the field last time. Don't know if you necessarily want to be on the inside, which she was. But this is her win 2 back, and maybe she is turning a corner a little bit. But like you said, I feel like this is one of her tougher races that she's going to have to face.
I agree. And this was a race that seemed to set up well for her on paper as she was cutting back in distance in here. And she seemed a little bit interesting going in because it seemed like there was some pace and she had been going a little bit further and maybe wanted that to close into. She's got a great ride and set up in here to get the win, and was facing open last time, but this is a level where I don't necessarily know that the waters get that much easier for her, and that's also kind of how I felt about Golden Rocket, who won impressively last time, but is this an easier race? I think it's much tougher.
Horse that you use that I don't necessarily get is number 7, Lisa's Vision.
I think that she's just kind of run surprisingly well on the dirt. She does need to get a little bit faster, but in terms of how she's performed when given the opportunity to be on that surface last time as well as the time before that, she's been able to show up with what's been kind of a fairer price for some of the horses that I feel like they get bet on their turf form. She, I think, has been a fair enough price going into those dirt races rather than being completely overbet on her turf races.
Yes, that statement is fair. I just thought as though when you're dealing with a horse that is more turf inclined, that they are going to run better on sealed surfaces. So she's going to have to do it on a fast track today. But she is a daughter of Laoban, so of course
They
she
can
could
do
run
anything.
well. Exactly. That'll do it for this edition of Talking Horses. As always, if you want to play along, make sure you do so with a Naira Bets account. For those who are not members, become one today, and you can earn that $200 deposit match bonus when you use promo code MATCH200. Go over to nairabets.com for all the information. We also have the middle pick 4s as well. And 2, as always on Sundays, the 0% takeout on Exactas here at the Big A. Head on over to nairabets.com and opt in. The cross-country Pick 5 begins a little bit later today at 3:40 with that Queens County Stakes and concludes with race 10 over at Oaklawn Park. And you can watch all of that and more on America's Day at the Races. We do kick off coverage at 2:30 on FS1. Sarah, as always, a pleasure. I'll be gladly relinquishing the seat to Andy Serling tomorrow. But I hope everyone has a wonderful and prosperous New Year's Eve and wishing everyone a Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
All right, Chris Griffin, Happy New Year. Take it away with those reprise of Scratches and Changes.
Born in the foothills of the Adirondacks over 150 years ago, the Saratoga brand has become synonymous with quality. Carefully crafted spring water. Each stunning blue glass bottle is created with the same attention to detail and care that has been the Saratoga hallmark for generations. So open a bottle, take a sip, and savor the Saratoga experience. Saratoga, an American classic that's always in good taste. Make every day exquisite.
Happy New Year, Maggie and Sarah, and to the entire Talking Horses team. Good afternoon. Welcome to Aqueduct. Happy New Year to you. The track is fast. 9 races on today's card as we close out the 2023 season and the Aqueduct Fall Meet. Mandatory payouts and pools. Here are today's Scratches and Changes. Race 1, start of the early pick 5. Mandatory payout in the early pick 5. Race 1,